Welcome to Just Another Podcast. This is episode 7. We're now getting underway and now have a couple under our belt. Today, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, coworker, and I guess industry worker, Adam Morrisette of Dirigo Draft Services. Welcome, Adam.
How's it going?
I'm doing well. I guess it's nice, beautiful weather out now. I mean,
Yeah,
I feel like I wish the COVID thing would have shifted just like 3 months. So maybe we all could have had the summer off and sort of off, but like not be working during the summer and then, have to be kept inside during the winter. But I guess we'll take what we can get right now. So Adam is a good friend of mine. I met Adam, it'll be two years ago now,
2
right?
years, yeah.
Because your 2-year anniversary at Orono Brewing Company would have been the beginning of May. And then Adam was my right-hand man for a while, and then he said he was going to leave me. And go back home, back to Annie, his wife's home. And but that changed because of this crazy COVID situation. So Adam's in town for a while at least. And I thought, I talked to Adam. This is weird because I was supposed to talk to someone else. That fell through. But Adam this is not like a extreme backup like Adam's last resort, because I did message you a couple weeks ago.
It's true.
And say I want to get you on here. It just happened to work out to get Adam on the podcast now to talk about beer and something that is not. I can't just pick a random person out and talk draft services. I can talk to anybody about beer, really. Anybody in the industry, I can say, hey, what's your favorite beer, and yada. I can't talk to everybody about draft services because A, there are bars and restaurants and even breweries who don't do it.
Oh, yeah.
B, there's not that many people who have a passion for it. Like, I do like cleaning lines because the end of the line cleaning, you feel like you accomplished something, and the next person to drink a beer is going to get the most clean and precise beer possible. But it's not like a passion of mine, for I would want to start a company like Adam started with Dirigo Draft Services. First of all, we don't like doing like interview, but I mean, obviously some questions help move the conversation along.
Absolutely.
Why are you in Maine?
Oh, man. So my wife, Annie, and I first came to Maine in 2010. She's finishing her PhD in history from University of Maine. So this was just kind of among our choices. Maine was what really appealed to us when we had our choice to make of where to go. So we ended up here. We were here for a few years, ended up moving back to Illinois thinking we'd have some better opportunities there. And then after about 4 years, we both decided that we really missed Maine and we wanted to come back, and that it'd be fun for her to end her writing her dissertation being here. So we came back and still don't want to leave, which has worked out well because now it's looking like we're not going to have to. I guess if there's any silver lining to the whole COVID thing, it's that it gave us some time to think about things. So that's how we ended up in Maine. But yeah, it's hard for us to leave. We love it here. We don't really want to be anywhere else.
I felt the same way because, obviously you know a little bit about my history and stuff, but I came back to Maine in 2016 after moving away for 10 years. And when I came back, I was with my ex-wife, and then we got divorced, and people were like, oh, so you're moving back to Massachusetts now. It was immediately the assumption that because I didn't need to be here anymore, that I was going to leave right away. And then I was like, no, I like being in Maine. Like, I don't mind being here. I didn't want to move back in the first place because of the fact that I was happy where I was as well. But with life circumstances, I was like, no, I like being in Maine. Now I don't feel like I want to go anywhere else ever.
Yeah.
Looking at the news and looking at the things that go on. We just talked about ticks the other day. I'm like, that's the one thing in Maine we have to worry about. Like, maybe a crazy snowstorm and ticks. There's no poisonous snakes. There's no real hurricanes or earthquakes or tornadoes or, I mean, really even flooding. I mean, there is some, but like, we're pretty safe. Like catching COVID potentially is probably the most fear I've had living in Maine. I'm 34 and I've lived in Maine for 26 of those years. That's the biggest fear I have is catching COVID right now.
Yeah, we're probably never going to get the murder hornets.
No, see? We can't. No. And the thing is I'm not pissed about it. It's just like, I feel safe. I'm in a bubble in Maine. I feel there's not much that can bother me. But we both, Taylor and I both love Maine. So that's a cool, like, we love the outdoors. We love, obviously, I'm in the beer scene. I love the Maine beer scene. I mean, we are lucky to be able to have hundreds of breweries in the state to choose from, to the point where a lot of these beer stores nowadays are just doing beer from Maine only. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about where we obviously both work for Orono Brewing Company, but also now Adam's going to be bartending a little bit over at Woodman's Brew Pub as well, which is our Orono Brewing Company's brew pub. But Mark, for a while, there's had trouble trying to sell out-of-state beer on draft, because people will come to Maine, they'll sit down at the restaurant and be like, "What's from Maine?" And Mark will be like, "Yo, we have a great beer from Southern Tier, and is it New York, right?" And but oh no, but what's from Maine? And so it's like every once in a while you have to like look at the fact that we are grateful enough to be in the state of Maine, and have those beer options. I mean, you must feel the same way, obviously, but.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what part of what even the first time around attracted me to Maine. I love how the focus is on local. It's not even like, it's not just a marketing gimmick in Maine either. It's like, it really is like the Maine culture. They want to know who's making their stuff. They want to know that they're right down the street. They want to be able to go talk to them. So it's just, I don't know, it feels much more organic in Maine.
Yes, and you lived in multiple places in this country, so you've seen other beer culture or beer, or just because you've worked at bars. I feel like us and maybe Vermont are like two places in this, even Northeast New England country, that people go, it says made in Vermont or made in Maine on it, and they give a crap. Whereas like there's not many people in Massachusetts where it says like, oh, this butter was made in Massachusetts. Like, oh, I got to buy that butter because it's made in Massachusetts. Right, exactly. Yep. Maine has that feel that it's like, I want to buy things from Maine because it's Maine. And when people visit from other places, they want Maine maple syrup, Maine lobster, Maine this, Maine potatoes, Maine blueberries. And now it's that point with beer. And it wasn't until probably a year, because I'm going on, this is my 3.5 years at OBC. It wasn't probably until like year 1.5, where someone came into OBC and was like, hey, I'm visiting Maine from Canada to visit breweries. They're not there to see Bar Harbor or Acadia or whatever. They said, we'll see those while we're here. But it's like, we're going to hit up as many breweries we possibly can in this state. And that's when I kind of realized, like, holy crap, there's like an industry, not just an industry, but a travel industry around beer in Maine now. It's just crazy. It's bloomed so much over the years too.
Well, I think that's the main experience, is like, if you can go do a beer tour and be somewhere as cool as Maine, because like, I mean, I'll throw Central Illinois under the bus because I lived there for years, but it's like, you wouldn't be like, man, let's go to Central Illinois and tour some breweries. And what else are you going to do? Nothing. It's Central Illinois.
So you sleep in till noon, then you go to breweries from noon to 8, and then you go to bed, and there you go. You got your tours in Illinois or Indiana or in that area. Really, it's not just Central Illinois; it's the whole, like the mid. Like, there's nothing really in Ohio and Indiana, and but
exactly.
It's just funny.
I mean, you can go to
crazy.
Chicago.
Yeah. Get deep dish pizza.
Exactly.
In this area, it's like now, like, you get your lobster roll and a nice craft beer, and you've done Maine. Like, it's, you're good to go. But obviously Adam and I have a passion for beer. We both work in the industry, but again, like I mentioned at the top of the podcast, Adam's passion is beer, because you're a home brewer as well. He's also helping out west, the western part of the country, helping with opening a cidery, which is pretty cool. And we'll get to talking about that a little bit too. But first of all, why should people clean draft lines? Like, that's the big question. Like, a lot of bars and restaurants and people, I mean, there's customers out there who don't care about beer. Like, not to throw people under the bus, because I don't want to alienate anybody, but like, those people who drink Miller Lite really probably could give two craps whether or not the line's clean or not. Not because it's not like, most of the time it's not safety. It's not like, I mean, there are bars that probably have draft lines that are not clean to the point where it could get someone sick. However, most of the time it's just dirty draft lines that the beer just doesn't taste the way it's supposed to taste. So why is it good to have a good clean draft line? That's a good question.
Well, no, I mean, I think what you just said, like, hits the nail on the head, which is, especially, I mean, like you said, you talked about like Miller Lite and draft line cleaning, of course, has been going on long before the craft beer revolution, not anywhere near as what it is now. But I think, like you said, the whole point is kind of, people put so much time into making this beer. And especially, I mean, look at Orono Brewing Company, where we are, everybody's super passionate about it from beginning to end. And then kind of across the board, you see this thing of like, that ends once it goes into the beer cooler, and then nobody thinks about it past then. And so, you know, you don't want to, the very end of your product to be like, now we're going to pour it through these lines that are going to make it taste like garbage. And, you know, and I know, like, when I was doing some of the trainings with it, the thing they would try to hammer into your head is the, you know, think of the keg as the final bright tank. And so when you're pouring the beer off the bright tank, you would want to treat it just like the brewery would pouring it off the bright tank. You wouldn't like hook up some dirty line that's from the corner of the brewery and be like, it's fine. Yeah, and it can dramatically affect the flavor of the beer, and it happens really, really fast. I mean, you've got, you know, the industry standard's a 2-week window, but there's places that really swear by a 1-week window for cleanings. I mean, 2 is like absolutely, like, God, if everybody would do every 2 weeks, it'd be amazing. But like you said, there's lots of places that don't ever clean their lines.
Yeah, I think there's some places that will clean their lines. Like they may not do like there are places. I'll pick out a place like Nocturnum. Nocturnum regularly cleans their lines. We love those guys and so on. But there's also like Mark. He would do it himself before you came along to do this. Mark Woodman's would clean his lines because he changed the beers, and it's like, which is fine, which is the same sense. Like you said, every 2 weeks. As long as you're changing that beer on every line every 2 weeks in general, and you clean that one line, it's not like they all have to be like cleaned at the same time. But a lot of these now with craft beer industry, you're changing beers so much too. So not only do you want clean lines, but you also don't want to put like an IPA over a peanut butter stout, because then your IPA is going to taste like peanut butter stout, at least for half the keg. If it's a sixtel, like you're going to get 20, 30 beers, 15, 20 beers into that keg and realize that, okay, now it doesn't taste like peanut butter. And you could, as a restaurant, obviously for Orono Brewing Company, we care about the product because we're the ones, we are selling it to a bar, but in our own place, when someone walks through the doors of Orono Brewing Company, they want a tubular to taste like a tubular, and so do we. So we care about it. But when we go to a place like, you know, well, I'll use Nocturnum, we love those guys. We expect them to have clean lines too, because we want them to taste our beer. You wouldn't want someone to walk into Nocturnum. They do clean their lines. I can use them as an example. And they have a beer poured off their lines and go, "Oh, this OBC beer tastes like shit."
Right.
Yep. But they don't realize it's not the beer that tastes like shit. Likely, it's the line that the beer got poured through, or even the draft. You know, not just a line, but you're talking about your whole tap system.
Yep.
And so I was gonna put in this post when I go to publish this on the internet is I'll write the recommendations to the America's Brewers Association. But it's 2 weeks for line cleaning. That's a basic cleaning. What are the other? So there's 2 other ones too, or there's other ones too, but there's 2 weeks, quarterly, and 6 months, right?
Right. So quarterly cleanings are the acid cleanings. So you do the every 2 weeks is a caustic cleaning, and that's for getting rid of all the biological stuff in your lines, bacterias and yeasts, and but then you also get the beer stone and the mineral deposits and the buildups over time. So quarterly you do an acid and a caustic. The acid breaks down the beer stone. The beer stone itself can impart flavors, but it's more that it's a substrate for stuff to grow on. So you do those quarterly, and then there's also the, you know, fully breaking down your couplers, fully breaking down your faucets. I do a faucet cleaning every time, soaking the faucets, and then and then every couple times what I'll do like a full, like, take the faucet apart. But so yeah, it's all just kind of like you said, it's kind of it's a every 2 week, a quarterly, and a 6 month kind of approach to the stuff that needs done. But yeah, and any one of those things, it's hard. I mean, you can do the 2 week cleanings regularly, never clean your couplers, and they're still going to be pretty good. But breaking down couplers that haven't been cleaned for 2 years is pretty nasty. Like, there's some funky stuff in them.
It gets to the point where, I mean, we've seen it. Woodman's, you just clean Woodman's lines, or you just replaced Woodman's lines because they were open, but they've been open for 15 years, and those lines have basically been 15 years. It's not because they couldn't afford to or just didn't think about it. It honestly was just that we just didn't do it. It wasn't a bad thing. It's just like after you went and looked at it, you're like, yeah, these probably could be cleaned or replaced. We at OBC replaced our lines, a year or
a
a
year
year and a
after you
half.
opened. Yeah.
Yeah, we opened because, I mean, we kept on trying the beer. We're like, this tastes like a beer that was off draft, and not in the way that we deal with as bartenders, that a customer
No.
goes, oh, my growler, I want a growler because it tastes better off draft. Not in that way that the beer tastes better on draft that someone thinks. It tasted like it came off of draft because you were tasting the draft lines. You weren't tasting anything. You were tasting, oh, that's tube that went through a plastic tube. Like, that's how you tasted it. At that point, Asa was just like, I'd rather drink it out of a can. Like, I'm just going to drink it out of a can because I know it tastes better out of a can than it did on our draft line. So eventually we're like, okay, Adam, let's replace the draft lines because having the right draft equipment, if you wanted to open a restaurant that you were known for serving good beer, having the right equipment and then cleaning it on a regular basis is what Adam here would make happen with his company. He'd make sure you had all that right equipment because you could open the best restaurant in the world, and if you serve your beer with the wrong tap system or the wrong lines,
wrong temperature, wrong pressure, unclean lines. I mean, the one at OBC, like you said recently, was nothing more than we upgraded from vinyl to the new, they have a line called FlexMaster that's basically like a flexible barrier tubing, and it doesn't impart any flavors. It's much harder for bacteria to grow in it. And that was just because, you know, having talked to like you and Asa and Abe, everybody agreed that like we do everything to the like highest quality we can. So why wouldn't we have the best beer lines on the market? And we do. Like, every line in our tap room is not vinyl. It's all the newer tubing.
As much as all of us as servers and bartenders absolutely hate how rigid that tubing is. That new FlexMaster is the word FlexMaster is a flex is not really in the actual name. I mean, it's in the name, but it's not.
It's in the name. It's not in the tubing. Yeah.
No, it's the tubing is not very flexible at all. I'll tell you that much. It's a, you know, the keg sits where it is. That hose, the draft line that goes that's staying in that spot. You're not going to move it anywhere else.
No. All they mean by flex is that it won't kink. It doesn't, but it doesn't have much flex to it.
And there are, I mean, you're not the only draft services company in the state, but there are not that many. There's not that many companies who go out there and will do this. There are bars that own their own system, like Mark for a while. If you took Mark and Woodman's as a company and separated it from Orono Brewing Company as a whole, if Mark was the only owner, he had a, you know, we call it R2D, the R2 unit, the draft thing. He had the ability to clean his own draft lines, and he was conscientious to the point where he knew he needed to clean them. But again, like we mentioned, we obviously won't tell names, but we know for a fact, like I could probably list off five names right now of places that I know that don't clean their lines on a regular basis. Even places that are considered craft beer bars that switch out their beers on a regular basis, that you go in there and someone would put a peanut butter stout, take it off, and then put on an IPA over it or something else, a cream ale or a Pilsner over it, where it's like have no adjuncts in it at all, and all you can taste is peanut butter in it. So the importance is obviously not just to promote the fact that Adam has a business and it's pretty cool that he can go to your place and clean draft lines. The money is worth it, because I feel like no matter what people charge for draft line cleaning, again, if you're trying, do you clean your dishes in the kitchen?
Right.
Do you, you know, make sure that your grill is clean at the end of the night? Do you clean the oil? You know, we replace the oil at OBC and the fire layers every week. Why do you do those things?
Right.
To improve the quality of this food that you serve to your customer. So why do you think people avoid cleaning draft lines? Is it because of lack of knowledge?
I think it's, I think there's a huge lack of knowledge for sure. I think for a lot of places it's money. Whether it's paying someone to do it or training someone in house and having them do it. And I, you know, I a lot of the stuff you get in the training is just, it's that kind of, it's breaking through that decades of culture of draft beer where everybody's opinion was like, well, I'm selling beer, so like, who cares? And what they found, it's like, one of the trainings I was in, I mean, that was the story. A lot of these guys that are the big trainers now, they came out of like, you know, Coors and Anheuser-Busch, and when they first really went out and started hitting these accounts and saying, hey, like, we've been doing a lot of research, and man, line cleaning is really important. It's nasty. Like what you're getting, not only like, you know, it can do It can also make hangovers worse, things like that. But it also just makes it taste gross. But what they found out is most of these bars were like, it hasn't affected our sales. And these guys were saying, well, actually, like, we're starting to look at it and we think it probably is dramatically affecting your sales. It's just that you've become used to this kind of level of what your beer sales are. But what they found is that in bars that don't clean their lines regularly or at all, there's almost always an inversion from draft sales to bottle sales, and a large one. And of course you want to do the draft sales. So
draft is way cheaper. I mean, if anybody who owns a bar or restaurant knows that, but like, it's like, it could be upwards to half the cost of what if not more, for a draft, for a keg of like tubular or whatever than it is to buy a case of tubular, or the equivalent in a case of tubular or
exactly.
Cans.
Yeah, and so what they find is just that you find these places that then they do it. So, they're convinced, like, look, try doing every 2 weeks, and in a year, their draft sales are up 3 times what they were before. And it's just that thing, because just because somebody drinks a beer, they're used to what it tastes like. It takes a while to convince them, like, oh, actually, this does taste a lot better now. And that's what people were finding out, even with like whatever Coors Light, is that they're drinking it after 6 months of line cleanings, and they're like, whoa, this stuff tastes really good compared to what I was drinking. So
it's a and I feel like I feel like there's some things that we have the education for being servers in the state of Maine, some insurance companies, and then some bars and restaurants, and actually areas. Bangor requires us as servers to take a training called TIPS, or an equivalent training, which is how to serve alcohol correctly to your consumers, how to not overserve them, not to check IDs, to not underserve, or to serve underage people. To say that's more of a safety thing. Why some of these companies, like, I feel like part of it also is, not to harp on any distributors per se, that some distributors install draft lines for companies, right? Like, you own a bar. I'm going to own, Justin's Pizza Shop, and I'm putting 6 draft lines in, and a distributor comes to me and was like, hey, you know what? We'll pay to put your draft lines in if out of those 6 lines, you handshake agreement, because it's illegal to do it, to put 4 of those lines as our drafts, so that we can guarantee revenue income to pay for those draft lines. And we'll clean them, and we'll maintain them, and all that stuff, which a lot of times falls right off. A lot of times they come in,
which almost never happens.
And they say, okay, and then the people who own the restaurant are like seeing the money coming in, and they don't want to see another bill on top of it. And some people honestly are so separated from being behind the bar at their own bar or restaurant that they don't know it's not happening. They may think it's happening because they just assume that, so-and-so distribution company is the one coming when you're open and cleaning it, even though it makes no sense, because you can't clean draft lines when you're open. So it's impossible.
Right.
It's impossible. But I think there's a part of that too, where it's like some people just don't know. There's too many restaurateurs that are separated from their companies to the point they don't know it's not happening. And coming in there and saying, hey, it's not happening, I can taste it in your draft lines. Because Adam as a whole, like some of us who work in the beer industry and drink beer on a regular basis, craft beer, that what the beer tastes like. We drink tubular, Adam's having a tubular right now, regularly. So we know what that beer tastes like. If we go into Mama D's, or Mama D's is a bad name because it's an actual name of a company, but if we go into Mimi's restaurant and have a tubular, and it does taste different than what you have it normally, that likely the beer is fine. Because on a percentage, I don't know the actual numbers, and I know we're not perfect, but we have very little kegs that go bad. There's very little percentage of OBC's kegs that go bad. So when you go into a restaurant, it tastes bad. It's not likely our keg. It's likely because those draft lines haven't been cleaned, and you don't know that. A customer equates bad beer equals the beer itself is bad, not the vessel, and not the beer glass. Like, it's not even just that. It could be the beer glass that's dirty, but likely it's going to be your lines, or your faucets, or the couplers, or the physical draft lines are old and not cleanable. That obviously it's hard to tell someone to get their lines cleaned because Adam makes money off of it. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if you were a non-profit organization that were just going to give beer knowledge to bars and restaurants, then people would be like, oh, that makes sense. Maybe I will clean my lines. When Adam's like, well, here's the invoice.
Yep.
Here's the bill for what me doing my services. They're like, ooh, every month, every 2 weeks. Yep. I don't know. I'd almost rather serve bad beer. And then know where that education comes. Do you think that it's like, how do you tell customers? How do you approach a bar and tell them they need to clean their draft lines? Like, is it
right?
I don't know.
It's a little easier now in that I think people are semi-aware of it. There's really only like one big industry standard training right now, and that's through Micromatic. And they provide a lot of data on that you can use with customers. And the big one, and that's that they push over and over, is just that, you really you've got to show them the numbers of you can tell them all day about bacteria in your lines and off flavors, but and like I said, it's not Micromatic. Anheuser-Busch and the big guys have been tracking this for years. Mm-hmm. So if you can show a company I guarantee you that your sales are down 35% from what they would be if you cleaned your lines. These big companies have tracked this for 20 years now, and pretty much across the board, you can say if you don't clean your lines on this regular of a basis, you will suffer this much of a drop in sales, guaranteed. Because even if people don't know they're drinking bad beer in a way that they can explain it, they do know they're drinking bad beer. But as being a general manager and thinking about that side of the business, the average customer, most of them aren't going to say anything. They're just never going to order a beer again, right? Some of them, and that's part of the education, that if they really knew, are certainly entitled in any place you're in to go to the bartender and be like, man, this beer tastes gross. Can I get something else? But most people will never do that. They'll just not order your beer again. And that's it.
And I won't do it because there's part of me, but my job in the sense that a lot of us who work for a brewery have a hard time telling someone their draft lines are dirty as well, because
right, of course,
we also don't want to look like the dickheads that are just basically saying you're not running your business correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So there is time where I can't tell, Mimi's restaurant that they have bad draft lines, because then it comes back on Orono Brewing Company that Orono Brewing Company doesn't like the way we're doing business. And that's the hard thing to go about doing that. But in the same sense, if I walked into a restaurant and saw some guy pick his nose and then, make my burger, it's why wouldn't you mention something like that too? So.
Yep. And then that gets down to, and that's the other issue that's talked about a lot is how it's regulated by the state. And most states they basically just say it's the wholesaler's responsibility, but there's no mandate for what that means, so nobody does it. And so Maine's a state like that, but Illinois, when I lived, so Illinois is one of the smaller handful of states that it's the bar owner's responsibility, and for them the ABC does check. Now, all that is you have to keep a log, and that log has to be signed either by a technician or whoever is your in-house person that cleans lines. And they do come and check them. And if you're never cleaning your lines, you can lose your liquor license. And so that, having been in Illinois, everybody cleans their lines every 2 weeks. Everybody. Because the one thing you don't want to do is lose your liquor license. And then there's
and if you lose your liquor license because that would come out why you're losing your liquor license.
Yeah.
It's because you didn't clean your draft line. Someone would be like, okay, not only does this person not have a liquor license anymore, but they also weren't taking care of the beer that I was drinking.
Right. And and you just said something, and basically, and that's the comparison that people make, is the kitchen gets inspected. So if they come in and they're like, hey man, have you cleaned your grill in a year? Nope. That's just not going to fly. And beer is a food product, right? It is a food product. And so I think that's the thing that's just, it's hard. Eventually states are going to have to address it. I did my training in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania requires cleanings every week. They're the only state, but I can tell you, I went to a bar when I was in Pennsylvania, and I don't think they enforced that rule, but
someone signed off on that piece of paper somewhere, but they didn't.
Exactly. No, our in-house guy did it, man.
Hey, you over there, you're this week's in-house guy, so just sign that paperwork.
Can you sign this for me? Yeah.
It's the small things. And I guess the funny thing about it is I feel like there would be more of an uproar in a state of Maine where we have over 120 breweries. We have a unbelievable Brewers Association, like the Maine Brewers Association. We have Abe sits on the board, so there's a bunch of people out there.
Yep.
So there's a very strong group of people, right, that are in the industry. But then you go to the
Yep.
level below that, and you look at the people that are craft beer fanatics. Some
Yep.
of them I would call there are the snobs. And
Oh, yeah.
not even the snobs say anything about it. Like, there's not even people out there. Like, I'm part of a group on Facebook that I ended up having to mute because I couldn't do it anymore. And in that group, they don't talk about dirty draft lines or where they drink beer and it wasn't very good. They'll immediately call out a brewery for a beer that sucks to them. Like, they'll I mean, they call out an OBC beer, oh, this wasn't that good, the flavors weren't that good or whatever. They'll immediately do that, but they won't say, this restaurant, I had a beer there. I don't know if I always, and the funny thing is, they'll say, oh, I've usually have good beer from so-and-so's brewery. They immediately jump down the throat that the brewery screwed up. And it's like, well, where'd you have it? Oh, it was some backwoods place in northern Maine. Well, obviously, then they probably aren't doing the right things in their bar. Why are you immediately going to jump down the brewery that had all kinds of good beer and you had one bad beer from them, and that's why you think that their beer is bad? Like, it's.
But you and I have talked about the same thing kind of in relation to whatever, growlers or other bars, but it's like that moment where you lose control of your product, but you're still going to be judged on it is really difficult. So that's why, as we've said many times, like a lot of breweries you see, they're like, you know what, we just don't do growlers anymore because, like, I don't know, like, what if you go home and stick that growler in your fridge for 6 months and then you serve it at a house party and everybody goes, man, Tubular is the worst beer I've ever had. And you're like, yeah, it's been sitting in a growler in your fridge for 6 months.
For some reason, it looks like iced tea. I don't know why it's so dark.
Yeah. It doesn't taste like hops at all. Yeah. So, and that's the same thing with draft lines. It's like, you're kind of trusting these accounts to take care of them. And like you said, that's hard with regulation because the big companies like Anheuser-Busch, they'll tend to be the ones that will go out and check accounts because they don't want to be losing a ton of money. But I mean, your average craft brewery can't afford to go out and sample beer at every single account routinely and check the dates and check the temperature, make sure the pressure's dialed in right on the keg. And so,
and we're on top of, like, as a brewery and our distributor, we have an excellent distributor and Craft Beer Guild of Maine.
Yeah.
They'll like our, I'll mention Smitty. Smitty's one of our great, he's now a territory manager or something. I forget his actual title now, but he was our sales rep for since basically we signed with Craft. And we have an event, he'll make sure those lines are clean before you pour it for an event. But he doesn't have the capability in the man hours to sell the beer to you all the time, and also make sure you're putting that beer on, because he does sell to a lot of craft beer places that rotate beer out. So, like, we'll be on a draft line, but the next beer could be another brewery from Maine. So he can't just go there and be like, make sure that draft line's clean, because we could be 2 or 3 beers behind that beer. So we don't know by the time it hits us. It might need to be cleaned in between those kegs. So there isn't enough manpower for our distributor. There's less manpower for us to be able to do that. I mean, we can,
sure,
as a company trying to be profitable, you're trying to keep your staff down. So I can't be like, hey, Adam, work 40 hours behind the bar, but also go 10 hours around the week and go to Bangor bars and try beer and test the beer and see if the beers are good. I mean, I think I remember hearing a story about Sam from not Dogfish Head, not Sam. Yeah, Sam. Isn't Sam Adams? What's his name?
Yeah,
Sam.
Sam Kelly, from Dogfish Head, yeah.
Oh yeah. So there were stories about someone, I forget who it was exactly, but there was someone who used to go into bars and he'd try a beer, and if the beer was not good because the draft lines weren't clean or the keg was old, he would refuse to pay for it.
Yep.
Like, he'd be like, I absolutely pay for my own beer that I paid to make, but if you sell me a draft and it doesn't taste that good, I refuse to purchase it. And he was very open about it. It was like, I own this company. That beer that's in the glass is my beer. And that draft line or that beer is too warm or whatever it may be, he just would refuse to pay for it.
Yeah.
But then there's other sides of it that I know a brewery who has gone into a store and saw that their beer was expired on the shelf. And instead of mentioning it to their distributor or mentioning it to anybody, they bought the beer so that it would no longer be on the shelf anymore. Out of their own pocket, they used their own personal credit card to purchase it so that this beer wouldn't be on the shelf anymore, but didn't tell anybody. Because if they told someone would be like, well, we don't want to buy as much beer from you in the future. So, like, this transparency of liking those states that you have to sign off on something. I think I'm just looking at the bigger picture that there's not. I think it's a team effort. I think breweries need to be advocates for cleaning lines. Restaurants need to. The Brewers Association, the distributors, like all of us have to work together as a team. And maybe it goes down to the point where we just are part-time bartender who works 5 hours a week. Like all the way down to that person being like, I refuse to serve this beer because my tips are based on this. And if I serve this beer and they don't like it, then I might not get tipped as well because it might be my fault, and so on and so forth. So I feel like as a whole organization of breweries, we should be more on top of making sure lines are clean. I mean, I agree. I have a picture of me at Orono Brewing Company, my third day on the job, cleaning lines with Abe at OBC at the downtown Orono when we had that old spot. The third day, I have a picture of me with my safety glasses on, facing the opposite direction. Abe's here showing me how to clean the lines. Like that was how important it was when I got on the job. You know, like I said, third day, I hadn't done a schedule yet. I hadn't worked a bartending shift yet. And I'm cleaning lines back there because they were very adamant about we need to clean our lines on a regular basis. And it's not easy, especially how I used to do it. I mean, Adam has a much more streamlined and easier way of doing it. I used a 4-tap.
I say you had the pressure pots, which are,
But it was something, and that's the thing that I don't want people to understand. Like, whether or not you do it every 4 weeks, it's still something more than never doing it. So, like, if you can't afford to pay someone like Adam to come every 2 weeks, Adam's not going to say no to once a month, because at least once a month, Adam can go, okay, at least I know this person's trying and they're moving in the right direction. Maybe someday down the road they'll understand it's worth the actual 2 weeks and so on. But like, if someone called you and said, hey man, I only need you once a month, it's not like Adam would say, no, that's not the right thing to do, because he knows that it's the right step in the right direction. And the same thing like we were using the pressure pot, which is not the best way to clean a line, but at least we were doing something and we were trying to make sure those lines were clean as possible and taking it.
No, and the pressure pot is like totally acceptable method of cleaning lines. Like nothing wrong with it at all. But yeah, I mean, like I said, that's back to your question. You were like, what's the most important? But I think that's the thing. I think it's the education bit. Like I can say for I have my company and I can do draft line cleanings and that's great. But for me, as far as the industry goes, like I'd be totally happy to if everybody just did it in-house as a consumer. And that's the hard part. Like you said with money is like, I mean, you could pay to do it. You also could send somebody to get the training. I mean, it's like all in, everything included. It's like $1,200 or something. And if that's your manager, they're fully trained and they're certified. They can train other people to do it. So, I mean, from that perspective, why not just get your in-house guy and,
correct,
do it yourself?
Yeah,
I'd be fine with that.
And in the aspect of it too, if you are a brewery, a lot of us breweries have tasting rooms that have draft lines. Like we are lucky enough to have a downtown Bangor location, our Martin Street location, and then in Woodbins as well. But most places around the state have one place. You have your brewery and your tasting room, your brewery and a restaurant all together. So you can train. It doesn't have to be a bartending or a manager. It could be your staff in the brewery. It could be someone you pay in the brewery that does the draft line cleanings. And a lot of us have, I mean, Bangor has 14 lines, and that's a lot. There's a lot of, out of the 120 breweries in the state, I would say most of them have 6 or 7.
Probably,
like it's not like, I mean, having that many draft lines, that's a lot of draft lines. There's let's see, Bangor has Blaze that has 50 something.
Yeah.
And then I mean, Gene has 20 now, but he had 12 for the longest time. So there's not many places that have, I mean, Seasons probably has quite a few. But there's not that many places where you're cleaning 50 draft lines in every couple of weeks. It's a lot of times, 5 or 6 draft lines. Then you do the daisy chaining thing where you put the tubes on either one. You get it all done in one shot. Like it's not this like huge undertaking. Excuse me. OBC has 24 draft lines, so it's a little bit more work for us. But like, it's not that many. If you're paying someone, say you had me, I'm a manager at a place and I had 6 draft lines. What's it going to take? How long is it going to take me to clean those lines?
If you invested, like you said, in the recirculating pump up front to do those 6 lines, I can do 6 lines in 45 minutes, maybe.
So say an hour. if most manager, if you tell a manager makes somewhere between $15 and $30 an hour, I'm just throwing it out there. 1 hour, it's going to cost you $30 every 2 months.
And
if I did it,
it's
2 hours.
And if I did it, it's going to cost you about $60 for those 6 lines. So,
but the point about it is like, if you just think about, if you sell 60 pints every 2 weeks, which you should, if you're a restaurant, you only sell 60 pints every 2 weeks, you need to revisit your business model.
Yeah, you need it. Maybe wrong business.
But say you sell, 240 pints in 2 weeks. Again, not a lot. That's only like 30 cents a glass. Like you're talking very little amount of money compared to what, and that's just talking about beer. A lot of restaurants have liquor. A lot of restaurants you're looking at, you're talking to $8, $9, $10 drink is only going to cost you about $2 to make. So you can afford to put 30 cents into a pot to pay someone to clean the draft lines.
Yeah. And that's a bit you were talking about approaching, business owners too, is that it's not just saying like, it's going to cost you X amount per pint, which is going to be like, my God, at bigger places, like negligible. Mm-hmm. But it's also guaranteed going to drive your draft sales higher. So you're going to make more money than you're paying because you're cleaning your lines. And so that's the big point to try to get through to people that's hard, is like, no, this isn't like, oh man, I have to pay you $300 a month to do 2 line cleanings. And you're like, well, yes, but your draft sales are going to go up.
And also some of the things that people don't, there's no way. There are some restaurants that track this, but there are other ones we don't track it as well at OBC because of the fact that we're on the point where if you order a beer and you don't like it, we'll get you a new one. We're a brewery. We want you to have what you want. You may have made a mistake and ordered 2 beer and you didn't like IPAs and you just don't like it and you want a hazelnut brown ale. We'll just take that beer back. We'll dump it out. We'll give you a beer. We don't track it that much because we're like, that's just part of doing business. But if you had, 3 or 4 people in a month take your $8 pint and not like it, but there's a likelihood they didn't like it because it didn't taste good because of the draft lines. 3 or 4 of those a month, that's $24 out the window as it is right there. And so if you were to clean those draft lines, there's a good chance that at least some of those wouldn't have come back. So increasing draft sales, but also decreasing returned beer, it equals out. Like it may not be, you might not make $300 more a month in drafts, but you might make $260 more a month in drafts and save $100 in returned beer because of, pouring a
or
draft
you're going to have that
through.
Customer that would drink draft for years, but they have those couple of bad experiences, and for the next 4 years they switch to bottle, and then that's still a cost to you. Like, to lose that customer from drinking Bud Light on draft to drinking Bud Light in a bottle.
And those are the beers, if you think about it, we talk about in the beer industry, talking about like Kolsch's and Pilsners and lagers are the ones that are the hardest to do because of how clean the beer is. There's nowhere to hide things. So if you make a Kolsch or a lager and you don't make it correctly, a lot of us beer drinkers will go, this doesn't taste right. And there's not like an IPA. If I make an IPA, if you make especially a homebrew, say you make a homebrew IPA and it's like not tasting the way you want to do it, you can throw more hops in there, or you can add junks in there, you can throw fruit juice in there, whatever, to make it taste better and hide your mistakes. I'm not saying a lot of breweries do that, but it's possible in a stout, a lager, or in an IPA, a sour, all these beers to change it with adjuncts and hops.
Totally.
With lagers and Kolsch's and Pilsners, it's not that way because you can't be like, oh, this is a dry. You can, but the people who drink those beers, the majority of them want a clean, crisp, easy drinking beer. So you can't be like, I'm going to add a bunch of hops to this because it doesn't taste right. So the same thing happens on draft lines, that you honestly almost was like going to a bar, and if you want to know their draft lines are clean, order a Bud Light because you know what it tastes like, and it's supposed to be this cleaner, easy drinking Pilsner, and you drink it and it tastes like shit. There's a likelihood that's not the beer that tastes like shit because these guys brew this beer for a science. Like there's very little number of times I've had a PBR and I've been like, this PBR tastes like shit. They are very good at making PBR. They make it every day. They brew thousands and thousands and thousands of barrels of it. It tastes the same every time you open a can. If you go into a bar and a PBR does not taste the way it's supposed to taste, there's a good chance that line doesn't taste good, and that's what you're tasting. It has nothing to do with the beer because they're professional at this. As much as we in the craft beer industry want to say craft beer is better, these people are professionals. Anheuser-Busch is a professional at making beer. Like they make beer taste the same.
And that's what as soon as I finish a line cleaning, that's always the first, like what I'll get everything flushed out, reattached is I'll pour whatever the lightest like Kolsch or Pilsner on tap is. And that's the way you can tell. And like you said, that's really the one, man, like where I talk about like that 2-week window you have, like that 2 weeks, man, like a Kolsch will start tasting like a totally different beer, like right at that 2-week mark.
And we don't serve that. We don't, like, I don't want to put on everybody's minds that OBC does this wrong, but there's been times that Adam usually would work on Saturdays with me until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. He'd get his shift pint, and you'd sit down and you go, "Yeah, I definitely got to clean the lines this week." And it's like, because Adam knows the drink. To the African consumer, we clean our beer lines every 2 weeks. So to the average consumer, people aren't going to be able to taste the difference because we do the job we're supposed to be doing. And if Adam goes, "I don't feel good this week," and he waits a third week, it's not going to make that much of a difference because we do it so often that missing a week or postponing a week is not going to change much. But Adam will sit there and go, "This tastes good, but I definitely."
Oh yeah, Oh yeah, I'm going to be in here tomorrow.
Yeah. And so we're like, "Oh, okay, that sounds good. Yeah, we know. But it's I guess not to harp on it too much about draft line cleaning, how it's necessary to people's drinking, but it's necessary. It baffles me, and it may be because it's one of those things that we see in the industry when we talk about, growler sales, for example. We talk about why don't people get the fact. I got a message from a customer the other day saying, are you guys putting megawatt in a growler? And I had to be honest with the customer and be like, we're not going to do growlers for the foreseeable future. And I'm able to at least, not blame it on. And if someone asks me, I'm going to be honest with them. But COVID, we don't want to bring back dirty growlers and yada, yada, yada. The truth of the matter is the likelihood that OBC will phase out growlers at some point in the next couple of years or year. Growlers are if you have an option to take it in a 500 milliliter bottle, if you have the option to take it in a 4-pack of cans, growler is third on that list. It is 100% third on that list. We have bottles of beer and we have cans of beer, and then you have growlers of beer. If you have the option for the first two, there is no reason to take the fourth.
Well, that's why whenever people ask me, I'm always like, we have a guy whose job is to make sure that beer is going into that can tasting exactly like it's supposed to. And like, I will do my best at the bar to do that, but I just can't.
And you're not there all the time either. I mean, Adam worked full-time for us for a while. I mean, he did switch to part-time a little bit here, there, but you worked full-time for your job was to work behind the bar. But we're also in a college town. I employed 2 or 3 people that worked 5 hours a week.
Yep.
So you're telling me the person working 5 hours a week is going to do a better job at filling that growler, and we do a good job. I'm not saying we don't, but
we do a great job.
But you're talking that person, that college student who went out partying the night before, is going to do a better job at filling that growler for you to take home for you to drink on Sunday. Now it's Thursday for the Patriots game. Than the guy that works in the brewery that literally stares at the cans, and every so cans checks the air in the can and checks the seals on the cans and checks the levels on the cans and the pH levels and the yada, yada, yada. No, but we get it in your growler. You make sure you get it in your growler so you can take it home. Yep. So you can use your little, we talked about it on the boat with Mark and Asa about I had this cool thing. You put it on there. It's got a little nitrogen tap and you press the thing and it pours draft beer for you. I'm like, that's 4 beers. That growler has 4 beers in it.
Yeah, man.
All of that work for 4 beers? Like, that just seems like a lot. You know what's really cool? Is I can go in the other room right now and go in my fridge and take a can and go,
yep.
And I drink it and it's fresh. And in the same thing we talked about, to change a little bit on this, we talked about the hut, and you're going to put, so not only does, your line service, your draft services company clean lines, but you also install draft lines. And one of the things we're doing at Orono Brewing Company this summer, which is kind of cool, and this is kind of it's not out there right now, but we'll say it here, is that we're putting 6 draft lines in the hut, in the beer hut. If anybody's into Orono Brewing Company, we have a beer hut, and one of the biggest drawbacks to the beer hut was cans. That you try to tell people that cans beer is the same as draft beer. It's not. I mean, we understand the idea for you to drink draft beer and want it on draft when you come to a restaurant, but if you can wait 30 seconds in line and have Adam open a can for you at the hut, or wait 10 minutes in line inside and go inside instead of being outside and get a draft beer in a glass. I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You're not going to have. If you would tell me there's a difference there, you're crazy. But because of that barrier that's hard to pass through, we're putting 6 draft lines in the hut. It's also cheaper for us. It's going to cost us to pay Adam to put the lines in, but it's going to be cheaper for us because a draft beer is cheaper than selling a canned beer. So we're putting the draft lines in at the hut. And so that idea of installing draft lines, not just cleaning draft lines, getting them installed correctly and professionally. One thing I've always say is I don't care if you have the distributor, Maine D or Vacation Land or Pine State. My recommendation to anybody that's starting a restaurant is have a third party install your draft lines. Don't take draft lines from a distributor. There's too many unspoken agreements, and there's too many, you need to do this, that, and the other thing. And for us brewery companies that are on distributors that are not massive, it sucks for us because you can possibly open a restaurant and you go to install your draft lines, and some draft company or some distributor comes up to you and says, we'll install your draft lines for free, like I talked about earlier, but 4 of them need to be our drafts. The other 2 can't be. So then you put their 4 on. You already have 2 draft lines on. You call up OBC and you be like, who do you distribute through? We give them your distributor information. You call them up and come to find out you can't put a draft line on because it's not through the right distributor and all this stuff. So it's actually going to cost you more of a headache in the long run to not have someone like Adam's company or any other of the companies you live in Southern Maine or another state to have an actual draft company install your draft lines. They know what the hell they're doing. They're not going to cut corners. If Adam's getting paid to do it, he's going to do it right. If you're not getting paid to do it, you're going to do whatever you can just to get it in there. So
and frankly, I mean, that's the thing with distributors too. Is they're on a much more of a time crunch, and that's like the conversation like Mark and I were having recently about the line install at Woodman's is like, it's not just installing like good lines and like cleaning everything, but like, there's a whole thing that goes in also to balancing the lines. So like a certain length of a line run has to be measured against what the lift or the drop in that line run is, what restrictions it encounters through hardware, what your gas blend is, what the pressure of you want is at your dispense point. And all of those things like go into a calculation to figure out what length of line you need, what length of chokers you need to create the proper restriction before the tap so that you get the right flow that you want. And you're not getting that for free from a distributor.
And guess what? Part of those equations equal how much beer you get out of a keg. So if you have the wrong line length and drop and all this stuff, and you work at a bar and you go to pour that beer and it foams, and that could be draft lines, it could be the keg that you bought, it could be the temperature of the cooler. There's a bunch of things that go into it. But if you pull that draft line, half the beer is foam, you dump it out, you're getting half the beer out of that keg. So a company like a big distributor installs your draft lines for you, they love that, no craps because of the fact that you have to buy more kegs. So if I have a keg I only get half the beer out of, means I only sell half the beer out of, which means that I have to buy another keg from that distributor. Why would they install draft lines to work perfectly? That's stupid. Adam has no stake in the fact that you make more money or don't make any money. So he's going to make you the most money so that when you're ready to go for a repair or a cleaning or whatever, you're going to call Dirigo and say, hey, can you come clean my draft lines because I'm getting perfect pours out of them and I'm getting, the right lengths and it's easy to change the couplings and they're clean draft lines and so on. So like we had that. I mean, I have worked for other places and you have worked for other places. And I will say right now, our draft line, OBC, you pour that draft. Very rarely do you have to pour beer out. It's like, it's done.
And the brilliance of like a well-balanced system is that if you have a beer that you're pouring, half of it out, it takes about 5 minutes to figure out what's wrong because it's only going to be about 3 different things. And you go back, you adjust the pressure, you adjust the temperature, or there's something wrong with the keg. And that's it. Like, it's a good system. Like you said at OBC, our system's clean, it's balanced. If there's a problem, we can figure out what that problem is.
And there is breweries. We have, people have bought beer. Mark has bought beer from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of breweries over the years at Woodman's. There are breweries that don't know how to carbonate their beer well. So it is possible that there is a beer that's not pouring well. But like the other part about a third party like Adam is that when you're going, we were standing up with the hut the other day talking about the beer lines at the hut, and you're like, you could get this, that, but you don't really need the expensive. Adam orders his parts from another company that he has no stake in. Like, he's not going to make you buy the $500 part when the $200 part will work for you because he he'd rather just have a better service with you. So it's like, there's this mix. I don't know. It's some of these things that people don't look at when they go to open a restaurant. It's like one of those things that you wish you could give everybody the information before they open the restaurant.
Yep.
Like some of the things you need to do, like, do you get your air conditioner serviced every year? You know, all those things that, like, do you do this? Like, oh yeah, I do that. Do you get the floors cleaned in the night? Yeah, I have someone who cleans the floors. Oh, do you have someone who empties your trash bins? Yeah, I have someone who does that. Then why aren't you having someone clean your draft lines? Like it's you don't when you're in the kitchen, you don't reuse over and over and over again the same bread bag. Like if like we have beer, we have the bread for the sandwiches, and you cut the bread up and you put it back in the bag. Once that bag's empty, you throw that bag away. You want to know why? Because there's crap in that bag that you don't want for a long time. So the same
or
thing
nobody
happens
goes.
for draft lines.
Well, they do, but for the most, you don't have people going, like, well, yeah, I mean, like, you should change your fry oil every week, but like, you can let it go a month and do it, whatever, dude. It's not a big deal. Like that. If you told that to somebody eating, they would be like, what? Like, yeah, we just let it go as long as we can.
And guess what? You can tell. When you go into a restaurant and their fries are crap, it's because their oil is crap. Has the fryer temperature, the type of cut fries and all that stuff. If you get in there and they're soaking with oil on their old looking fries, it's likely because their oil's
like fish.
old. Yeah, exactly. So there's these small things that's so funny how some people will think about it and some people push off to the side and not do it. If you go to a local restaurant or bar in the state of Maine or any place, and they have great tasting beer all the time, it's likely they do what they're supposed to do. And they get their draft lines. And Adam, if you go to his website, DirigoDraftServices.com,
that's it.
If you go to a website, Adam will come to your restaurant. Obviously he's not going to drive to Pennsylvania for you for free, but like he'll come to your restaurant and check out your draft line system or give you a quote on what it would cost you to change things or clean things or whatever. Adam's going to do his best, because the best thing about someone who starts a business like your draft services company is Adam has a passion for it. So it's not just some way to make money. It's because he's going to do it. He's not going to want to do it if he's doing it wrong. That's one of those things that it's like Asa brewing beer. Ace is not going to brew a beer that's brewing it wrong because he has a passion for it. Abe's not going to do something stupid in the restaurant or for OBC because he has a passion for it. It's just, Taylor works for a freaking engineer. She's engineering passion. She's not going to do something stupid because she has a passion for it. So find those companies that are like wanting to help you. They're not doing it for free because someone's got to make a living, but like they're wanting to help you. And that's something that I know personally, and I can vouch for Adam. It's stupid sometimes, his passion for draft line cleaning. Like, no offense, Adam, but there's times where I'm like, Adam, I feel like you're getting sweaty and like flush in the face just talking about this. Like
my thing is, and that's what drew me into it, is just like what drew me into it is because it's one of those things that's overlooked. And like, as somebody who loves craft beer and has been homebrewing for years, like, and I've talked about this like with Aces, like I just hate the idea of all of the time that a brewery is putting into beer and then thinking that like at the end it goes in some like nasty cooler somewhere and they pour some gross ass beer for you. And like, that just kills me, because I know the guys working in all of these breweries and like they love what they do and they want to provide you with the absolute like best beer they can make. But then all it takes is the guy in the end to be like, yeah, I'm fucking here.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the cool things about when we started OBC is we didn't sign with a distributor. So we were able to pick up like places to put our beer. Now it's a little bit less likely for that, but we have such faith in our distributor that hopefully we go into bars and restaurants that give a shit. And that's one of the benefits we get hopefully with OBC, is that you're getting that aspect of it. But hopefully Adam can be that person to help these other companies understand, it could be the smallest thing where Adam just goes and installs a draft system so you have a good draft system, and then eventually you get it cleaned by him and so on. Draft line cleaning is huge, and we're sounding like complete nerds here about draft, but it's like, because if you like it, Adam, if I called Uriah and we talked to Uriah on the Uriah's our kitchen manager, if we went to the kitchen and talked about cleaning draft or fry oil all the time, that conversation would be about 30 seconds long. There'd be a right answer and a wrong answer. There would be if I mentioned, well, you can go like 6 weeks without changing it, I would be absolutely wrong. OSHA would be like, all these different safety and health organizations would be bad at me. But it's like, some reason when we get to the draft lines cleaning, it's behind the wall The taps are on this side. It's like the people who work at the restaurant, people who own the restaurants or bars or tasting rooms, see the tap on the outside, and they go back there and they see it attached to the keg and don't give a shit about what happens between the two of them. And it's like,
and the worst part is, as the, like, you know, you're the consumer drinking the draft beer, is that you're trusting that the bar that you're at is serving you really good beer, just like you would imagine that somebody's not serving you tainted food out of a kitchen. And it's just really not often the case. And that's super crappy. And that's why I said, you know, consumers need to know too, that they're totally entitled to go to their bartender and be like, sorry, man, this tastes terrible.
I mean, if you have a beer and it doesn't taste the way it's supposed to taste, here's the deal. If I tell so-and-so this beer does not taste the way I want it to taste, and they cleaned the draft lines 3 days ago and they did a correct job, then it is the beer. And guess what? That likely will get back to the distributor, and the distributor will likely tell the brewery, hey, by the way, this beer is no good. So whether it's draft lines or just the beer, we work in the beer industry. Tell someone if your beer does not taste the way you're expecting it to taste.
And that's always the thing I try to drill into people too. I promise you as a bartender, I am not offended.
No.
If you come up to me and you go, man, I'm sorry, just this really doesn't taste right. It's totally, man.
9 times out of 10, likely someone's going to give you an extra $1 for a tip because you did something more for them anyway. So for us as a server, we're going to be like, no, we're going to help you. Because in a sense, in the same sense, Adam's job as a bartender at Orono Brewing Company and at Woodman's is to make us the most money possible, right? Because we're a business. We're not in it for free. But also, Adam knows that that customer coming back a second time is going to make Orono Brewing Company more money than if Adam doesn't replace that beer for you and you don't come back. So the truth of the matter is, if you mention that your beer tastes like crap, the likelihood is that it's going to help the business as a long haul. And then it may be something, if enough people say this beer tastes like crap, it will wake up some of these people to say, I need my lines cleaned. And or looked at, or they're old, or whatever it may be. And it's one of those things that when you see a restaurant that you know probably doesn't clean their lines, go, happy 50th anniversary. You're like, oh, God.
And like I said, and even if it's your local brewery, even, and then you tell them, I promise you, like, it's you or me or Asa, like, if you go, man, this doesn't taste right, like, we're going to check it. Like, it's not we're not going to wait till you walk away and be like, jerk. Like, if you go, this tastes really gross, like, I'm going to taste it, you're probably going to taste it, Asa's probably going to taste it. And if we all go, I think it's fine, he probably just doesn't know that style. But if we taste it and we're like, yeah, that's weird, it's off. Like,
if we pull it, it's there's no question behind it, because it's our livelihoods here. If we have a bad beer, or a bad draft line, we're gonna lose money. And that's the thing. It's like, I hate to talk about finances, but it's like, if anybody thinks that we're in it for free, we're not a nonprofit organization. So we're going to want to give you the best product, because we're going to know that the best product going out there makes us the most money. And that's the simple answer. So if you want to be the best restaurant, bar, brewery, tasting room you want, is make sure that you do everything you can. And if it's going to cost you $200 or $300 a month to make sure you're at that, then do it. Cut somewhere else. Cut your, stop, whatever, buying better napkins and buy whatever it may be that you pay a lot of money for. Is budget yourself for $200 to $300 a month if you have to for draft line cleaning. If you want to spend the $1,200 ahead of time and send someone like Adam to Pennsylvania to get the training, so you have that information, then you can train other people, then do it. Like, it's their livelihood. We talked about it, and there's all kinds of things you can go further on it, but it's your livelihood of your brewery, your bar, your restaurant to clean your draft.
And it's a craft, right? It's a craft. You're proud of it. I mean, the guys in the brewery, they're interested in running a good business, but they also want to give you something that they're proud of. And so they want to know that what's going out in that glass is just as good as it was when they put it in the keg.
And the only thing we can really pay attention to is if we go somewhere and the date's wrong on the can. That's like the only thing we can do. I mean, a lot of us go to the same restaurants and bars, and a lot of them we have faith in. A lot of the places that we drink, we know if we put our beer on in this area, likelihood it's going to be a clean draft line, because we know these people, or we sell beer to them on a regular basis. But we rely on a lot of the customers to help us out. And if you're out there drinking beer and you know what tubular tastes like, tell someone that the beer doesn't taste good, because likely we can fix that somehow. And hopefully it's not a bad keg, but maybe it's a bad keg, and we want that keg back so we can replace it. And
we want to know,
because no one's perfect. There's not a single brewery in this country who has not taken back a bad keg. I'll tell you right now, I don't care how much you love your brewery and you think they're the best brewery in the world. every single brewery you've ever been to has had a bad keg. Every single one.
Without a doubt.
So, but before, I know I wanted to do about an hour, but before we, we've harped enough on Draftlands. What's going on? So you're doing your home brewing. Obviously, you home brewed for a number of years. You're making a good. You make good beer and stuff like that. But you're also going into cider. Did you make ciders before? Like, have you made ciders all along?
Yes. I mean, I've made them all along. Not anywhere near the frequency that I've made beer. But recently it's picked up. So I have some friends out west that are starting a cidery and food market. They contacted me about starting the cidery side for them. So we're pretty deep in at this point. Looking to start construction in like 3 months. Starting to work on recipes. So yeah, now I'm like drowning in cider at the house, just trying to work on kind of recipes and different adjuncts that we want to mess around with the ciders. But yeah, that's been the new exciting thing. So I'm still doing the draft line cleaning business, which luckily is really flexible. Still working at OBC. I mean, minus COVID, of course, which all of us are waiting for to be over.
Does that helps with your cidery? Like the idea of like trying these things that you don't have to worry about anything else but that, basically. I mean,
absolutely.
Like for the past 3 months, we're going on closer to 100 days of being. I mean, what's today? Whatever day it is, but today we're releasing this tomorrow. But this is the 16th. Literally 3 months ago today. So March 16th, Orono Brewing Company said we weren't going to open for the day, and we've been closed. So we're on the 3-month part of this COVID thing. So 3 months of being able to stay home and make your own cider and beer and stuff. So this probably helped a little bit.
Yep. Lots of Zoom meetings and as we're all doing, but I mean, that's been fun. It's let me kind of focus on that a little bit. And, it's always fun to talk about starting something. It's weird when all of a sudden you're like, oh no, this is happening. Like we're rapidly approaching the point of no return. I think we've hit the point of no return.
Oh yeah. I bet. But so ciders is obviously something different. We both will drink ciders. I mean, we talked about the fire starters. Is that the one that you had to
from
talk about?
Country.
Yeah. So there's some ciders that were like, this is really good. I think one of the best ciders in this country right now is the first press. I mean, there's something about it being like tasting like apple juice that just like, why would you drink regular apple juice if you could drink the first press? Taylor loves it too, and she's a big cider drinker. But the cider part of it, if your friends wanted to open a brewery, would you be doing that too, or is it just like is it just because it's something to do, or is it like?
I've always been interested in being like I said, I've done more time brewing, but I've always been really interested in the idea of a cidery. This goes way back. This was a friend of mine from grad school in 2004. And way back when we had even kind of batted around the idea of starting a cidery or a winery. And so I think just as time evolved and looking at what they want to do with like a food hall as well, cider just made sense as a pairing to that. It's a little bit different. It's not quite as saturated in the market as craft beer is. So it's just something different and fun. It definitely, cider falls under winemaking. So a little bit different than the brewing side of things. But yeah, that was something we talked about. And so as it started coming around, we were like, yeah, let's do it. So we've got a pretty cool consultant helping us out. He was a big cider maker. And so he's kind of filling in the gaps for us. But yeah, I mean, we're starting construction in like 3 months, and we're hoping to be open like first quarter of 2021. So
that's awesome. The cool thing I will say about cider is like a lot of beer drinkers will drink cider. Not every cider drinker will drink beer. So it's like one of those cool, and you have your wine drinkers and your hard seltzer drinkers. Not like cider is one of those like middle ground things where everybody can get involved in. Like we don't have to worry about, I mean, it is sweeter. So like you can't have as many, I don't think, but in the same sense, like there's not one person who works at Orono Brewing Company that wouldn't, if someone handed him a cider, wouldn't drink a cider. There's some people that wouldn't drink IPAs or whatever. So
cider's in a fun place right now too. I mean, it's, it's been emerging, but it's nowhere near craft beer. But all of a sudden you're starting to see people doing the same things in cider that you saw, 10 years ago in beer, which is really starting to experiment with yeasts and adjuncts and ways to do something different than just a basic cider. Like I did a cider with Kvike a couple weeks ago, and that's something that people are just starting to kind of mess with now. I'm looking at fermenter it. And it was the craziest fermentation I've ever seen, which we all know, like Kvike is nuts, but I'm like, for cider, I've never seen anything. I've never had blow off with cider before. And it was like overflowing on the floor. So that kind of stuff's fun.
Are you going to look to do like hop cider too? Like I know like there's some people who do, there's ciders like Graft in New York who do just basically like they're a cider drinker for beer drinkers. They're a cider company for beer drinkers. So you're going to do a little mixture of both, some fruits, some hops, some cool yeast.
Yep, we're going to do some really basic styles, but really like hopped ciders are like one of my favorites. So we're definitely going to do hopped ciders. Working on some different kind of like adjunct fruit ciders to represent like local types of produce in the area. And but yeah, like I'm totally into the hopping and the adding fruit, and just it's a super fun way, especially like even to engage locally with what kind of stuff's available. And yeah.
That's pretty cool. I'm super excited. When you told me about it, I was super excited about it because it was like first two things. One is I am 100% on board with any one of my friends being like, hey, I'm starting something new. Because I just think one of those, too many people talk about doing something new and then don't do it. Like it took me 3 years, 4 years to do this podcast. Yeah. 4 years. And so when I was like, I'm going to do it, and I actually started doing it, I was like, they had some people message me and like, that's so cool you're doing that. And, and Taylor and I started married into this over the COVID situation. And we were talking about, like, we talked about how, like, we married into different passions, and my Marvel passion and my beer passion. And she wasn't really into either one of those. And so we're like, let's just do it. And so like people were like, someone messaged us yesterday and we're like, I'm so cool that you guys are doing that. It's like, I just love the fact that someone's doing something that they're passionate about and you're actually doing it.
Exactly.
Whereas, same thing with your draft line cleaning services. Like you just, like you're passionate about it and you're doing it. There's too many people out there, including myself and probably you in the past, who have talked about doing something and just not done anything. And so it's really cool to see that you're doing something, but yet, I mean, I'm ecstatic. When you told me we weren't going anywhere, I was like, Adam's not leaving. Like, I'm so excited because I felt like we got close over the past couple of years. And now I was like,
totally.
Damn it. Now he's leaving. Because like, when our wedding was bigger and we were having 100 people coming, at that borderline of who we're inviting, I'm like, oh, we're going to invite Adam and Annie. That's fine. Like, I know it's going to be on a Saturday and we'll have to figure out scheduling. I don't give a shit. I'll figure it out. And then you're like, you're leaving. I'm like, well, that made that answer quick, easy. I'm not inviting Adam and Annie anymore. And then COVID hit and we have gone down to 48 people. So no one's really invited, honestly. But it was just kind of funny. It was like this quick, like, no, Adam's not there anymore. And then Cassie told me, because it was kind of funny. So Adam was my lead bartender at Orono Brewing Company, where he still works there, but like he was the lead bartender. And then Adam said he's leaving. So we're like, oh crap, now what? So we talked to Cassie, who was like next in line, and said, hey, would you like to become lead bartender? And then Adam told us on my birthday that he wasn't leaving. And Cassie goes, oh shoot, what's going to happen now? And I'm like, don't worry. Adam's not the kind of guy to come back and be like, I want my job back and all that. So we're going to figure something out for Adam, and Cassie's still here. But like, it was just kind of funny. She's like, oh, now what? I'm like, don't worry. It's going to work out. It's not a big deal.
Nope.
But, so draft line cleaning is important. I want to get that across the line.
Yep.
DirigoDraftServices.com is a place that you can find out more about it. Adam is also, I think your phone number's on there. Call Adam.
Everything's on there.
Text him. Email him, ask him questions about draft line cleaning. It's important. It's necessary. If you're opening a bar, we feel like it's necessary. Put that on your budget list. Also look for whatever cidery, we can't say the name yet because it's not fully, actually I don't even think there is a full name yet or a logo, but
exactly.
We'll look for that in the future because we're going to,
we'll do a future podcast on that.
Maybe I'll have Adam come back on and we'll talk about cider, and maybe we'll
get
your other guys to come on with it too, the people that you're doing this with.
Yeah, totally.
Kind of cool. But I really appreciate you coming on and doing this kind of last minute.
Definitely, man.
I'm excited to talk to you. I haven't talked to you this long, and I don't even know how long.
It's been ages. I know.
We got to get back together and have a beer. Like, I just missed the shift pints. I just missed you sitting at the bar after your shift and just shooting the shit. Now it's like, I posted on the Crew app today. We use the Crew app to talk to everybody, and I posted that we're gonna have a meeting about trying to open WBC at some point soon, and everybody's just like, yeah. And I think part of it's like, oh shit, I have to come back to work, but I miss everybody. I want to see everybody again.
A meeting, yes.
Well, absolutely. Well, most of us know there's probably going to be beer at the meeting, so that's
of course.
That's one of the benefits of working for a brewery. Meetings usually equal beer, so I mean, free beer is always nice. But I really appreciate you coming on again.
Of course, man.
Adam's on Twitter, but he does his own thing on Twitter. But we're not gonna. If you want to find Adam on Twitter, you're more than welcome to. But Adam has deleted his Facebook page and doesn't do Instagram anymore. I don't think either. So usually I promote those two. But DirigoDraftServices.com. It will be in the description for the podcast on YouTube and on the all the podcast channels. Check him out. I'm really glad he's in here. I'm glad to call Adam my friend, and I'm glad he's passionate about something. So I really appreciate you coming on, man.
Of course, man.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, definitely. Next time we'll talk cider.
There you go. I'll see you soon, man. Okay?
All right.
Thanks, Adam.